Okay, so this is going to be about David Hume. Now, if you remember the John Locke video, or you know something about John Locke, then you'll know that John Locke was an empiricist and he was against the rationalists. The rationalists were people who thought that your mind and you already have loads of shit in your mind just from sort of having a mind, and that you can sort of use all the stuff in your mind to work stuff out and know things and understand the world just through introspection and just by sort of using the tools of your mind. Whereas Locke had come along and said that's a lot of bollocks and that nobody knows shit about anything and until they experience it and they get the ideas from experience. So you're born with fuck all in your mind, and then you go through life and you learn shit by experiencing it, and you get the idea of colors and shapes and sounds and images and whatever and what things are what, and the whole sort of what the world is because you've experienced it or you've had experiences, so that you know what what's what. And that's a lot of bollocks to say that you have anything sort of already in the mind that's about the world. Yeah. So anyway, Locke had come along and said that everything that you know comes from experience, basically. And Locke had been in the sort of end of the 17th century, and we're now sort of in the sort of the middle kind of bit of the 18th century, and we're with David Hume. Now, Locke had been an Englishman, and David Hume was a Scottish man, a Scotsman. And David Hume was part of something called the Scottish Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was this big movement all across Europe, including in France and England and Spain and everywhere in Europe, when people were sort of saying, you know, we've got to be clever and we're going to stop being stupid, and let's criticize the ideas that we don't like, and let's say that this religion's bollocks, and let's say that what the king is saying is a lot of shit, and let's sort of come up with these ideas, and let people be free to think for themselves, and let people be free to write and stuff and say what they think about things, and let's have all these ideas that come out, and people sort of challenging authority and challenging dogma and stuff by having these free ideas and being clever. And that was called the Enlightenment. And part of the Enlightenment was all these really good books that came out about stuff, you know, about economics or about politics or about religion or about science, or, you know, loads of stuff. Everyone's sort of getting their ideas out, you know, and that's called the Enlightenment. And this Enlightenment is really super, super, super important because it leads to like the American Revolution, the French Revolution. It leads to all the sort of advances in science and advances in politics and having democracy and everything that we have now. And the basic ideas of the Enlightenment, you know, that people should be able to think what the fuck they want and say what the fuck they want and write about what the fuck they want, and that we should have universities and stuff where people like really get good at thinking and explaining things and stuff, and that people should be intelligent and try to learn shit and make up their own minds about what they think about stuff. All this is kind of what we think now, most people, you know, and that's kind of what we're supposed to say about life and about the world, that you should be clever and you should think for yourself and you shouldn't just be told what to think by some cunt. And you should read and learn stuff and all that. Because before, people were sort of saying, well, no, don't let people learn stuff and say what they want because it's dangerous. Because the cunts in power want to stay in power by telling everyone what to think and what to say and all that and what to believe, you know, the religion and the governments and that. but anyway, the Enlightenment was mostly the 18th century, but it sort of started in the 17th century and continued into the 19th century as well. But this Enlightenment is really important in history, and it's like one of the best things that ever happened really was the Enlightenment, because it really sort of stopped people from being twats and made people start sort of having good ideas. Anyway, dragging on with that a bit. But anyway, David Hume, was part of what they call the Scottish Enlightenment. And Scottish Enlightenment just means that there was a good group of dudes in Scotland who were really clever, and they had these really good ideas, and they wrote these books about different things. And it was really good because Scotland is, quite a small country. It's not as big as France, for example, but the fact that they had quite a lot of these clever dudes, is quite impressive for such a small country. And Scottish people can be quite proud of that, that they had all these dudes in the Enlightenment. And David Hume was one of the big ones, and he's my favourite of all the Scottish Enlightenment thinkers. Anyway. It's not to say that they stayed in Scotland and they didn't have any influence outside. They did. They were part of this big movement called the Enlightenment, and Scottish guys like Hume were involved with French guys and all that, and they were all sort of this big sort of team of people from different countries that sort of all were doing this stuff, and they all had different ideas about things, and they didn't all agree on everything, but the basic gist of what they were about was sort of freedom of expression and freedom of ideas, and having ideas and being clever and stuff, and not sort of being tied down by the old ways. Okay, so David Hume had sort of two hats that he wore, similar to Locke. Locke had his politics hat, and he had his sort of abstract philosophy hat. And they're sort of different things he was talking about. And also Spinoza, if you remember Spinoza, he also had these two hats, his politics stuff and his sort of abstract philosophy thing. So it was quite often the case that they sort of, these guys were sort of political philosophers, and then there were also sort of abstract philosophers as well. And there's not necessarily any big connection between the two, not necessarily, but sometimes there is. Anyway, so I don't want to say too much about the political stuff of Hume because I'm not that au fait with that, but I'll start with that a little bit just to get it out of the way at the beginning. But what I want to concentrate on with Hume is his sort of abstract philosophy and his theory about knowledge and understanding, because that's really, really important, and it influences other thinkers as well. And a lot of philosophers say that the problems that Hume came up with are still not answered, and that Hume is still fucking right about a lot of stuff he said, and that no Kant has actually come along and sort of really been able to disprove what Hume was saying. So Hume is brilliant because he's still, still the daddy, and he's still sort of, he's still right. There are people who disagree with him, think he's a cunt, but he's a formidable guy, and his ideas are really good. Anyway. So David Hume, Scottish Kant, Enlightenment thinker, knows politics, right? He was a conservative thinker in politics. He thought that you shouldn't go fucking having revolutions and trying to change everything, and he thought that if you've got governments, then that's what you've got, and there ain't any, no Kant's really got any idea about how to do things a lot better than what there already is, and you should kind of sort of stick with what you've got as a government, rather than sort of trying to have a revolution and create something new, because there aren't any cunts that are sort of clever enough to really come up with something better, because the thing that you've got, the system of government and society that you've got, that has developed sort of organically over the years, and whatever it has become what it is, by sort of things going well. And if you try to sort of fuck with it and sort of have a revolution and sort of make up something yourself, then it's going to probably be shit, because who the fuck are you, and what the fuck is your brain and your mind compared with the sort of collective history of everything that's made this happen. And I'm not sure I'm saying this right, I might be confusing him with Burke, but I might have to do another video about Hume's political philosophy anyway. But he was a conservative basically, and he thought you shouldn't be messing with things and sort of changing things too much. You should sort of respect the institutions that you have. And there are some people that say that that's kind of right. Conservatives, they say, well, look at Russia. You had some cunts in Russia that said they wanted to change everything and have a revolution, and they wanted to make everything better. But they kind of made things a bit shit, you know, with people getting killed and stuff, and people starving, you know, and in other countries where they've had revolutions, sometimes it's been good, but sometimes with revolutions you end up with something much worse. And so Hume sort of thinks that, you know, just sort of leave things as they are, you know, and sort of don't try to be overthrowing things, you know. So he was a conservative politically. So that's going to be that now, and now we're going to move on to talking about Hume's political philosophy and his more abstract philosophy, and now we're talking about knowledge and understanding. And Hume writes a book about human nature. I think it's called Treatise of Human Nature or something like that. And he wrote another one, Theory of Human Understanding or some shit like that. Anyway, but he basically, the one book was kind of like a sort of a dummies version of the first one, where he sort of tried to explain it in an easier way. But his writing was actually really good, and if you read Hume, it's nice to read. It's a bit like reading Jane Austen or something like that. It's sort of quite beautifully written, and it's humorous and it's witty and it's nice to read. It's not like reading some fucking bullshit book. It's not like reading Kant, you know, which is fucking hard. It's actually really good to read Hume. It's nice to read. It's pleasant and well written. Anyway, what was he writing about? Well, he was writing about knowledge and understanding and how human beings know about the world and what it means to know stuff, and what you can know and what you can't know, and how you get to know stuff about the world. And Hume follows from Locke about saying that everything's about experience. You can't know fuck all about anything that you don't experience, and the only things that you know come from your experience. So there's nothing already in the brain, you know, or there's nothing going on in the mind before you get the experience. You have to get the experience, and then what happens when you've got the experiences is that then you sort of can sort of do stuff with experiences that you've got, with the ideas of the things that you've experienced, and then you sort of organize them together in your mind to figure out a system of how the world works. And that's sort of how science is, isn't it? You know, scientists make discoveries and they see things, and then they sort of put them with other things that they've seen, and they sort of work out a theory, and they say, well, this is how it works because we've seen it do this and we've seen it do that, and then so we're going to say that's what it does, you know, as a sort of general rule. Now, David Hume comes up with this theory of induction. Now, induction is a sort of way of figuring out things and saying that things are like this because you've experienced them in a certain way, and you're going to expect them to be like that in the future because you've sort of theorized that that's how they work. So scientists use induction because they see something happening. They see like that I don't know, ants create a fucking ant hill, whatever, and they see the ants doing this stuff all the time, and they see what the ants are doing every day, and they sort of make a theory that ants do that, and that's what ants always do. And if you see an ant, then he's probably going to be fucking doing that, whatever it is he's doing, you know. They have theories about cause and effect, that X causes B. So they'll say, you know, if you're a big fat cunt and you're really unhealthy and out of shape, then you might get a heart attack and die. And the reason is because they've seen the fat guys sort of have heart attacks quite often, and more than the other guys, and because they've seen that happen that way, then they come up with a theory that there must be something about connection between the two things. And anyway, so what we get into with Hume is this sort of theory that people basically, when they experience things, they sort of make notes about them in their minds, and they sort of think that, well, that's the way things work, and that's how the world is. But the reason why they've come to have this theory about how the world works, and that it's this way, is because they've experienced it that way in the past, and they've seen it happen loads and loads of times, and the more times something happens this way, the more likely you are to think that it's going to happen that way again in the future. You know, whereas if you always get fucking beans on toast every day because your dad does the dinner, you know, and he gives you beans on toast, and the cunt always gives you beans on fucking toast, then you're going to expect to get beans on toast the next day, and you're going to think that there's some sort of mechanism in the world that means that your dad's always going to give you fucking beans on toast because the cunt's never given you anything else. So you think that that's what you're going to get is beans on toast. And in science, you know, the biologists and the chemistry guys and the physics guys and all the rest of them, they kind of do the same thing, but they're doing it on in a more complex way about the world, you know. And science is they're sort of making theories about stuff based on things they've observed and things they've noticed about the world from their experience of it, you know, from looking in microscopes at things and looking in telescopes at things and doing experiments, you know. So that's like a bigger version and a more complex version of thinking that you're going to get beans on toast. But basically, there's nothing in the scientist's mind when he's born, or the scientist hasn't got some sort of fucking magic power in his head that makes him know that the sun fucking does whatever it does, and the moon whatever, and the planets do this, and that the nature works this way, and the sperm goes in the egg or whatever. That's not some sort of magic power that the person has in his head, the scientist. That all comes from, you know, experience and experiments and scientists sort of seeing things, observing things and noticing them and writing them down and telling other people what they've seen and stuff, and then them building on that with what they discover and all going together to create science. For science is all based on experiences that people have had, the same as what you think about your life and what you think about the world and what you expect from stuff is all based on experience, you know. But sometimes it can be that you trust other people's ideas, you know. It can be that you believe the scientists are right and that they've done the stuff and they've had the experiences, and what's been written down has all been experienced by some cunt, but you don't have to actually necessarily go out and look at the stars yourself to believe that they exist, you know. Anyway, but it is all about experience. So all knowledge comes from experience, and it's all done sort of in this way of experiencing things, and then those experiences sort of confirming a belief that you have that this sort of stuff works this way. Laws, basically, laws of nature. So you come up with these theories of laws of nature, that this is how the world works, based on all the experiences of all the things you've seen happen. And there's no sort of, the rationalists guys, you know, Descartes and all them were a bunch of cunts, and they were talking bollocks when they were saying that you sort of have this mechanics in your head or whatever. So it's all about observing things and knowing things and learning things and sort of developing theories about things, how they work. And when you have a theory about how things work, then that means you can sort of predict how they're going to happen in the future. And if you do gambling or anything like that, and look at horse racing, then people, when they're betting on horses, they see a horse and they see that the horse has won loads and loads of races, you know, and has been the winner 17 times in the past. So if you want to say that that's going to win, you want to bet on that horse, then they're going to not want to give you lots of money for doing that, because, you know, that horse probably will win. But if you pick some horse that has been shit and has lost every single time it's in a race, you know, and you want to say that I think that's going to win and I'm going to bet on that horse, then they're going to give you more money for doing that, because they say, well, you're not going to, it's not likely that horse is going to win, and this is probability, basically. And so anyway, basically, when you've seen the horse win all the races, then you've developed the theory that that horse is fucking good at running. You know, we haven't looked inside its body and done all that. The only really thing we need to sort of experience to have an idea and a belief that that horse is fucking good is the fact that it's won every fucking race it's had. Whereas the horse that's been losing all the races, you have a theory in your mind that that horse is shit, you know, and probably won't fucking win if it races next time. So that's how you've developed your theory, and basically all the sort of theories in science, they're sort of the same sort of thing as that, you know, but on a more complex level. But it's nothing really that different from that. And the reason why you think the horse is shit is because you because it's been losing all these races. But and you go into another example. If you imagine some cunt who doesn't know anything about the world, and the only thing he does in the world is he's got this ball and he bounces it on the ground, and that's all he does all fucking day. He bounces this fucking ball on the ground. Now this cunt who's bouncing the ball, he bounces the ball the first time it comes up, and he bounces it again, it comes up again, bounces it again, it comes up again, and every time he bounces this ball, it comes back up again, and he does it like a million times, you know, and he thinks that there's some kind of law of the world that means that every time you bounce that ball, it's going to fucking come up again. Because he's never had a contradiction of that. It's never happened that it doesn't fucking come up. But that isn't like saying that a square has four sides. You know that a square has four sides because a square is always going to have four sides, and it's bullshit to say that it isn't. You know, and you can never say that a square is going to have three sides because that would be bollocks. Because a square is a thing with four sides. And if it was three sides, it'd be a triangle. And you're not going to have an experience of a triangular square. It's not going to fucking happen. Whereas this bouncing the ball thing, now he's been bouncing it and bouncing it and bouncing it and bouncing it and bouncing it, and he thinks there's no fucking chance in hell that that's going to not come back up again when he bounces it. But he might be fucking wrong, because the cunt might not bounce. It might fucking disappear, or it might go straight into the ground, or it might grow wings and fly away, or it might say fuck off and kick him in the balls. You know, it could do anything. There's no actual, obviously it won't, you know, but or it might, you know, it might sort of burst accidentally and then sort of deflate, and then he's like, oh fuck, I thought that ball was going to bounce. And this new experience that he's having of the ball not bouncing has destroyed his theory that the ball's always going to fucking bounce. And the thing about this, the problem that we have with this experience, and the fact that all our knowledge and understanding comes from experience, we might be wrong about shit, you know, and we might experience or find out something that tells us that our theory that we had before was wrong, because even though before we kind of thought we were right about this thing, because we'd always experienced things that confirmed that idea and that belief, there's nothing to say that a new experience or something might come out that will disprove that, and then we'll say, oh, we were fucking wrong about this, and it's actually that, you know. And if you look at science, you know, quite often in science, scientists have done that. They've thought that they knew everything about, you know, this thing, and then they discover something new, and it throws their theory down the toilet, and then they have to make a new theory based on these new experiences. And if you think about the horses again, now the fact that you've seen this horse win every time, you know, and you think it's definitely a good horse and it's always going to fucking win, and it's probably going to win next time you see it race, and that this other horse is shit and it's not going to fucking win. You might be wrong next time, you know, and the horse that's been winning and winning and winning all the races all the time might fucking break its leg, you know, or it might get fucking bored in the middle of the race, or it might turn out that that's Pegasus and it flies off and fucks off, you know, or it might turn out that the horse just can't be bothered that day and doesn't give a shit, you know, and then the horse that you thought was shit might have been having some sort of might have been having a bad time all the other times, or he might have just thought, I'm gonna fucking pretend I'm shit and then be really good when they come out at the end. So, and that horse that you thought was shit, that had been losing, might suddenly get really good and win the race. Now you might say not likely, but we're talking about probability then. Likely and not likely is just you having a theory, but you can be wrong about your theory, and something that can happen that can change and make you have to change your theory and change your idea and change your belief system of the world. So you don't really fucking know shit, really, about the world. Everything that you think you know about the world is based on experience, and those experiences might turn out to be fucking wrong when new experiences come out and disprove or go against the theory that you had based on the previous experiences. So you don't really have knowledge of the world. All you have is experiences of how it was in the past and ideas about what it's going to be like in the future based on that. But you don't have any, all your ideas about the world, they're just bullshit, because you might be fucking wrong about them, and something might come out that shows you that it's wrong, and you were all over the place. But anyway, now, is this a problem? Well, it kind of works though, doesn't it? You know, this method we have of making theories about things based on experience and saying, well, if it's been like that most of the time, it's likely to be like that in the future. You know, and that kind of works for us mostly. And yes, we do sometimes have to change it, but it's sort of like the best we can do, and we're doing our best with using experience to come up with ideas about the world. That's what we're doing. And it's not like we should give up and just say, oh, we don't know fuck all. But the truth of the matter is that we actually don't really know fuck all, and you can't know anything 100% certain about anything. You can sort of say, oh, I'm 99% sure, or I'm sort of 70% think that this is how it is. But there's nothing that you can know from experience that's going to be 100% definitely true all the time and everything. Because there's always a chance that you might be wrong, and that something might come out that shows you that you were wrong about that, you know. So is this a problem? Well, it's not really a big problem, but it's a problem if you want to say that you know shit definitely, and that there's definite shit that you know. So a lot of people were wanting to say that, well, you can have definite theories and you can prove things 100% to be true or false or whatever, but Hume said, no, you can't do that. You can, the best you can do is sort of a good theory, and the good theory is based on experience, and experiences can change because you get new experiences, and then they make you change the theory, and the theory you had is a lot of bollocks. But it's the best we could do. And then he says, why do we do this? Why do we think that because something happened this way in the past, that means that it's going to happen again like that in the future? Is there any sort of logical reason for that? Is it logical to say that the ball's going to fucking come up again? Is it logical or is it rational? Is it something to do with mathematics or something that says that if you drop it on the floor, it's going to come up, or that the good horse is going to win the race, or you know, is it logical? Is it rational? Is there anything that you can say using logics or sort of mathematics to say that this is the right thing to be doing? And he says, no, it isn't anything to do with logic or anything like that. It's not logical or it's not rational. There's no reason why that should be the case, that things happening in the past makes it so they're going to happen in the future. It's just that's the way we think. And it's from human nature, he says. It's human nature to come up with theories based on experience and expect things to fit those theories in the future. It's human nature to have loads of things happening in the past and then to think that they're going to be like that in the future. You know, it's just like babies have this, don't they? Dogs have this. So it's not just human, but dogs have it as well. You know, you know, you blow the whistle, and that means that the dog's going to get some food. You know, or you know, the baby cries, and then the fucking parents come over and change its nappy or feed it or whatever. You know, and they just expect that every time this happens, then that's going to happen. And he talks about causality, which is the idea that you think that X causes B. You think the reason why this happens is because that happens. So you think the reason why the ball came up is because you bounced it, or you think that the reason why you won the money was because you had the right horse, you know, or you think that the reason why you're fed up is because you haven't had a wank, you know, and you think that if every time you don't have a wank, you're going to be fed up, or it might be that you you've got a toothache and you didn't brush your teeth yesterday, and you think brushing your teeth, whatever. Anyway, but that's a bit more difficult one. But basically, you've got two ideas, and you put those two ideas together, and you think when this thing happens, that thing's going to happen, and you think that there's something about the situation that means that the thing that the one thing makes the other thing happen. And you have these theories about causality, that the world sort of, that things cause things to happen, and but the only reason why that is the case is because you just imagine that this has made this happen, because every time you've seen this, you've also seen that, and you think that they just go together, all the time, and your whole entire system of the world and how you think the world works is based on experiencing things in a certain way, and then thinking that that's the way that they're always going to be, and that's the way they work. But it's just based on your experience. So you've seen John and Jane together. Every time you see them, they're fucking together. You've never seen them apart, and you sort of start believing that maybe they can't be apart and they're always going to be together. But then tomorrow you see Jane by herself without John. You say, "What the fuck's John? You're supposed to be together." And she says, "Oh, not necessarily. We have been together every time you see us in the past, but it doesn't mean we always have to be together. You can't, Anyway, and that's kind of how limited we are. And it's just something about our human nature that makes us do things like that. It's nothing to do with logic, and there's no definite sort of logical reason why it should be like that. It's just the way we do things. It kind of works, it kind of does all right. We do all right with this system, as animals, we kind of survive, and we improve our lives by using these theories that we develop from experience, but it's never that we know anything for definite or 100% certain. So that's kind of what Hume is all about with his philosophy, and it's the theories of induction, and it's the theory of the way we use probability, and the way that we everything's from experience, but there's no 100% knowledge, and we're not logical. We're not these logical kind of godlike things, like Spinoza and Descartes and Leibniz. They thought that we're like sort of godly, and there's some sort of way that we know things by some sort of logical sort of mastery, and that we're like the masters of the world because we're part of the logic of the world, and the logic and the mathematics and all that stuff means that we've kind of got like a special look in to the world, and sort of a bit of the mind of God in us, and that we kind of know how the world works a bit because we're bits of God, or because we are rational or whatever. But Hume thinks that's all a load of fucking bollocks, and it's all bullshit, and it's a bunch of wank, and that really we're just sort of animals, really, and we sort of come up with these ideas based on what happens to us in life, and we're doing the best we can in the same way that a dog or a cat does, or a pig, and that's really what he's about. We're animals, we're human beings, we behave in these ways through nature, and all our minds and the way we think. That's all just from sort of being animals and having this type of animal nature, and we're not special like the way that Descartes and Spinoza thought we were special, And Hume has developed this theory sort of after Locke, saying that there's only experience in it. Anyway, so Hume's really sort of quite interesting, isn't he? Because you don't know fuck all, but you're an animal, and you're doing the best you can with sort of what you're doing. Anyway, now Hume becomes really important later on to Kant, because Kant is going to come along and say, well, fucking hell, we don't know anything for certain. That's a problem. I want to know things for certain. What can I know for certain? This theory of induction, of just knowing sort of best guess experiences is a bit annoying. I want to know stuff for certain, 100%, and that's what Kant then tries to do. He tries to find something that's going to be 100% certain all the time, because Hume has said you can't. Anyway, well, that's the next one. Is going to be about Kant. I just want to say a little bit about Hume's ideas about religion next, because it sort of fits in with what he's been doing with the rest, and it puts him in the Enlightenment. But Hume basically also sort of says that religion's a load of bollocks, and that people talking about God and telling you that God's real and that you have to do what the religion says, that's all bullshit. And Hume is kind of an atheist, really. He's an atheist thinker, which means that he doesn't believe in God. And he kind of thinks that when people say that God exists and they can prove it, and they say that all these books that have been written in the Bible and all that, that they're special, that they're full of shit, because people are just people. People are basically animals. And when they start talking about things that they think about God and stuff, they're talking a lot of bollocks, and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Basically. Anyway, I don't know that much about his. I haven't read the book about religion. His book he wrote about religion, and it's sort of written in a sort of like a Socrates, like a Plato book, and it's sort of conversations, made up conversations between people. And I don't really like reading stuff that's written that way. I think it's a bit annoying, but so I didn't get through the book. But I know that he says that religion's bollocks, and he's an atheist. So yeah, that's David Hume really. Also, people said he was a nice bloke. They called him Le Bon David, which French means, the good David or whatever. And he was a Scottish guy, and he was a pretty good fucking guy, really. I mean, I don't know what to say about him other than that. So just a recap: he was a conservative, politically. He didn't agree with revolution and all that. He was an empiricist and thought everything was about experience. And then he said that everything's about experience, and nothing that you know is 100%, because it could change, and you could be wrong about stuff, and you can never be like 100% sure that you know everything about anything. But because we're humans, we're animals, and we just that's how we do things, and that's how we work, and we're doing the best we can. And then he says religion is a load of bollocks. So yeah, that's David Hume.